Mr. Robert Piconi, Chairman, CEO, and co-founder of Energy Vault SA.
Thank you.
Welcome again, and thank you so much for being here with us here today. Since that exciting evening in 2019, when we first met on the Executive Award stage in Lugano, to February 14th this year, with your NRGV listing at the New York Stock Exchange, what is your first thought about this quick performance linked to the unequivocal fact that you're really impacting the planet with decarbonization?
Well, thank you. Buonasera a tutti. Thank you, Rosella, Kim, Ruby. Pleasure to meet you here the first time. Look, it was a pleasure then to receive the award in 2019 for innovation. And since then, for us as a company, we've been focused on growing and scaling the business. For those of you that might be new to energy and energy storage in some sense, it's so critical as we get wind and solar now deployed widely, which is much cheaper than fossil fuel by 50 to 75%. The problem is it's intermittent. You have to store it. Storage is expensive. Most of the storage today, lithium-ion batteries, are not sustainable. So we focused on really getting the business scaled with a new concept using gravity that I won't go into the details tonight, but essentially it's an alternative for large utility scale storage, which is what we need if we're going to accelerate wind and solar to replace fossil fuel. So the last 2 years, we focused on scaling the business, working with customers like Enel Green Power. Italia was fundamental for us to build our first scale unit in Switzerland. We got the motors from Nidec out of Modena in the north of Italy, so our multi-megawatt motors were produced there. We got the main crane components also from the north of Italy, and also even our brick machine that makes these 35 metric ton bricks, not from concrete because concrete wasn't sustainable, also from the north of Italy. So Italia played a critical role, especially during a very difficult COVID period, to get our first commercial scale unit built. And that became the basis of the proof point of the technology that led to all the way up to the IPO, which appropriately Valentine's Day, February 14th, La Festa di San Valentino in New York earlier this year, which was just an amazing experience. So focus has been there now on scaling the business to help the planet.
I have to ask you this question. As a sustainable leader, what are, in your opinion, some of the features which decision makers must possess in the next decade as to sustainability?
Well, I think tonight from the speakers, Corrado Pastera mentioned the responsibility we have and how 10 to 15 years ago, people would have been ridiculed. If I understood the Italian right, tomatoes would have been thrown at you. So I would say between that and what Ruby Sheng just mentioned about the economic side, it's really about courage, coraggio. That you have to make decisions and push things that maybe are non-traditional, maybe not liked. So I'll use one example that we did as a part of the IPO. We had a large group that came into the company to invest 50 million from China. And to get a deal done with China, you know, is complex for a lot of reasons. You have IP concerns, and we were introducing a brand new technology into China at scale. There's concerns also on compliance and things becoming a public company. But they invested 50 million in the company. They did a 50 million license up front. But in addition, China, if you don't know, is the largest producer of greenhouse gases. So by a factor of almost 3 times the next highest country, which by the way is the United States. And in fact, China, the GHGs they produce, which is almost 12 gigatons of CO2, is one that is the next 8 countries combined equal that total. The US falls to about 4.5 gigatons of CO2. So we have a large problem to solve. It took courage, and it takes courage, I think, to go into China with a new technology, new IP. I think it was the first example, Kim, of a US technology developed, which we built a lot of it here close by in Switzerland. First example of a US technology, new IP being introduced, at least in parallel, in China. I don't think we have a corollary to that, but so critical that we solve that problem. You know, China has set a target, which I have a lot of respect for what they set, to try to become net carbon neutral by 2060. Unfortunately for them, given energy demand is so high, they're going to be increasing GHGs, so greenhouse gas emissions, until 2030. And I just don't think we can let that happen. I have 8 children. I have 2 of my children here. I should introduce Luca and Vito. You guys raise your hand. And I mentioned Thank you. Yeah, we just arrived from Los Angeles this afternoon. So I mentioned this in the vein of all of you have families, children, eventual grandchildren, et cetera. We need to provide them a planet that's livable, that's at least what we have today, and maybe even better is we have new technologies that I'm very optimistic about. Carbon capture, so removing carbon from the air, solar fuel. So these are things where despite some of the gloom and doom you hear, and it is very urgent we solve this problem, I'm optimistic that we're going to be able to provide a wonderful planet for everyone's future.
Thank you.